we're going to introduce one of the finest of our American homegrown filmmakers, the great Rick Linklater.
Thank you, Michael.
Now,
Thanks for staying. This is fun. Thanks for being such a great audience. Hadn't seen it in a while. It was fun to revisit Bernie and Miss Nugent.
the thing about Rick Linklater is he defies our expectations for genre. And watching this movie again tonight, I think this guy's the 21st century answer to Preston Sturges. What do you think?
Yeah, right.
And also, the fact that it's a true story is amazing.
Like I said in the intro, oh so true. I really didn't make much of this up. The real Danny Buck Davidson, he's become a friend. He's such a character, this guy. But he came up to me after, and he was like, when he saw the movie, he says, "We didn't take their kids, swing set or whatever." I go, "Yeah, but everything else you kind of did." And there was some question of whether people of Carthage would like this movie, because this is what they're known for. This one crime still, even though it was in the late 90s, it still is a big thing in that community. And so they were paranoid. They don't like Southerners don't like films being made about them. They're always going to be portrayed as hicks. They're always going to, they're touchy. So, they didn't. We only filmed there a few days. We filmed in another part of the state, kind of closer to where I live in Austin, where there's pine trees. It looks like East Texas. But we were there a few days, and I could sense, we were shooting across the street from a church, and on the, these signs they have on the church, they put, because they had heard about the movie and that it was a, dark comedy of some kind, which none of them understood. But the church sign said, "Murder is dark, but not comedy," because they knew we were filming there. I was like, "Oh, okay, welcome to town." But and so there was all this question of whether they would, like the film or it could ever play there. But Danny Buck saw the film. We had a screening in Austin I invited him to, and he came up to me after and said, "Oh yeah, you'll be fine in Carthage. Yeah, Carthage will like this." Then he kind of whispered in my ear, "Don't let your car break down in St. Augustine, though. We're the trial." With that southern kind of hint of like, ooh, he kind of means it, yeah.
Do you think, was there any kind of resentment at all that you were criticizing them or satirizing the people?
I'm one of them. They were sort of disappointed. They liked the idea that Hollywood's coming to town. They liked that attention. They were disappointed when I said,
but you're from Bastrop, Texas.
I'm from Huntsville, like 2 hours south of here. I'm in East Texas. One of my producers was from Paris, Texas, a little town just north of them. Matthew's from Longview, which is about 25 miles away. So we were pretty indigenous, actually. So I think they wanted us to be bigger time when we were just like an indie film. But they're still paranoid. They still didn't know how we would treat it, or some people just didn't think it was funny. But at the end of the day, the idea of it, particularly the couple of the churches in town, just thought you should never, do that. But it actually played in that area at some towns around there and did really well. I mean, it played all last summer and into the fall. It was a big hit, in towns that would never usually even get a movie like this. It played for a long time. So.
You were going to make this movie long before Jack Black was in the picture, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was conceiving of it in the late 90s, the trial was 99. I was writing the script right then. I wasn't thinking. That was probably why it didn't get made for a long time. The planets lined up only after I'd worked with Jack Black in 2002, 2003 on School of Rock. And as he got older.
Great movie.
And, we're friends, and he was getting older. It was like he was aging into the part of Bernie. I was like, I gave him the script. We were talking about doing another film that didn't work out. And I said, well, check this out. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And he got back with me and said, God, it was like one of the most interesting things he'd ever read. And I could tell he was a little, didn't know what to make of it, but he was compelled to play that character. He was just like the best kind of artistic challenge, I think.
Speaking of that,
scared but compelled.
Rick, we have somebody joining us right now, a voice. Jack, are you with us?
It is I, the voice
of
Jack
God,
Black.
Jack Black. Jack.
Hello.
Jack. We miss you tonight. There's a huge theater, beautiful theater full of, how many does this seat?
About 1,000 people are
1,000
here
people.
for you, Jack and Rick.
You feeling
Don't
the love?
miss me. I'm here. I'm hiding behind the curtain.
You're like God. You sound like God.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman.
The miracle, modern technology.
Well, your face would be up if it were one more step up. But anybody have a question for Jack while we have him? Jack, anything you want to say? Have you talked to Bernie lately? I know you sent him a letter.
I sent him a letter, but I haven't received a response.
One of the key moments on this film, we were just starting our Q&A here, Jack, and I was talking about it, but one of the key moments, I think, in our own, you and mine, our development was when we actually went and visited Bernie in his prison. We got permission to do that. And, I asked Jack, do you want to go, if a true story, sometimes the actors want to meet the real person or the director wants them to or not, And I left it up to Jack, and Jack was like, no, I want to go meet him. So we did that.
Seemed like we had to. It seemed like a mandatory preparation. And I was profoundly moved by our meeting with Bernie. I was really glad we went. He's just a really sweet guy, and that's part of the amazing thing of this story is how the sweetest guy in town could do the worst possible thing. Kind of the intriguing part of it. Until you meet the guy, you don't really understand the story, of the complexity of the story.
Yeah, we learned so much those couple hours we had with him that day, and because of Jack's celebrity, Texas prisons are really locked down. You don't see them on those TV shows, lock up. They're never in Texas prisons. You get very little access. They don't want you to know what goes on there. But because of Jack's celebrity, people were coming around the warden and getting their pictures taken, and Jack can be very persuasive. He's the nicest guy, but he said, hey, do you think we can see that craft shop Bernie keeps talking about? And the warden's like, well, I guess so. Yeah, I can take you there. And so we got this tour. We saw remember we saw the craft shop, we saw his cell.
Yeah, we got to see him in his element. Yeah. And just to hear the delicateness in his voice and the tenderness with which he related to the other people in the prison, and the things he was working on in the workshop. He was working on delicate crochets, tributes for the loved ones that he left behind in Carthage, Texas. He's still doing the Lord's work.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone else in there was doing, wood carving and leather stuff, and there's Bernie crocheting his little things. That was a good group of guys, though. It seemed like I felt a lot better about Bernie. When you think of someone in prison, you have to imagine the worst kind of life, but I felt really kind of relieved and sort of happy for him that he had made a life for himself. He seemed to have quite a few, he had what seemed like good friends, and he truly had made a life, for himself inside there.
I mean, it really, for me, it just drove home the reality that, this is not a guy who you would in a million years think was capable of murder. So that's sort of at the heart of the film is, this was a case of temporary insanity. I hope that we made the case strongly enough, because I know sometimes when we screen it for audiences. At the end, we say, hey, who thinks that Bernie should go away for life? And, half of the people raise their hand and say, yeah, murder's murder. And I feel like, okay, well, maybe I didn't do my job. But
I've never seen that. Most people, there's like 3 people in the audience who think he should get life. Most people think it's kind of second degree, murder with circumstances, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's very different. He's in there. He got sentenced as if he had planned that thing for a year. There are people doing so much less than life sentences who did the most heinous crimes imaginable.
Yeah.
When
you're dealing with a real story and a real person who's, paying the consequences for their actions, I've never experienced something like that on a movie where I was feeling like, oh God, there's a real responsibility here to the facts, and it was a pressure-filled experience as well as a joyous one. I had a great experience, but it was also, it's a serious business.
Yeah, that prison life. And, for research, we had recordings. Jack didn't have a lot of reference, I would say, to church, music in that way. Jack's got that great voice, but I was able to give him audio recordings of Bernie singing a lot of those songs. And we got to pick. It was so fun to see Jack just jump into the musical element of this movie and take that on.
Yeah.
Didn't he? I mean, that's incredible.
Jack, I have a question.
Yes.
Jack, how difficult was it to play both a comedic character the way you do in comedies, and you're so great at it, and at the same time playing this real life drama?
Well, I didn't really think about jokes or getting big laughs. I was really just trying to play it for the reality. I mean, that's the way I saw Bernie when we went to see him. I felt like I was just sort of channeling the real guy as much as possible. And, there's some funny things inherent in the story. But we weren't out to make a big, broad comedy, or at least I wasn't. I was just trying to, let it be and let the laughs come if they would.
Yeah, that was the vibe. I think in a dark comedy like this, it's a tonal challenge. And I remember just talking to the cast, because, there's a very campy version of this. You could pitch this at a different level. But I remember the vibe we were taking. It's like, we don't have to embellish or do anything. Like, let the natural circumstances and the words and everybody kind of carry the comedic load, that let's just play it kind of straight, and
Was the Matt McConaughey character in real life as excessive as he was on the screen?
Yeah, the real Danny Buck character who I was talking about earlier, oh yeah, he's quite the actor. I mean, I was at that trial, and I didn't make anything up, that less miserables thing. He did that. And then years later, this was 99, so by the time we're making the movie, it's what, 2011, whenever. And I got to know him, and, I asked him, I said, so tell me, Danny Buck, that less miserable, and he just looked at me and said, did you like that one? Yeah, I got that. He's a real showman, and he's really smart. I mean, he's up, within the next year, he's going to have his 6,000th conviction. I mean, he's really good at what he does. And
what's so amazing
and
about
it's amazing. I talked to him. I just saw him the other night, actually. He was in Austin. We hung out for a bit. And I said, yeah, like they say was it the thin blue line, the Earl Morris, anybody can convict a guilty person. Like I said, to get a life sentence for that, I mean, she was so possessive, so mean. He couldn't find one person to say anything nice about Miss Nugent. And still he got that. He was able to get that big conviction. I mean, I don't think Bernie got the best defense. What do you think, Jack? Did you ever meet anyone who said anything nice about Miss Nugent? Didn't you sit by someone on a plane or something?
No one came to her defense. It was great to have so many people from Carthage, Texas, in the movie, and that would sort of reinforce the fact that he was beloved.
Is it true that you are currently trying to get him out of jail?
Oh, not more than, there's a lawyer who's definitely doing it. I mean, you see this movie, and a lawyer came up to me after, it was our Austin premiere, and she was like, she kind of specializes in abuse, and she's really done a lot of research, and says, well, Bernie was kind of like, it's hard for people to imagine, but he was sort of like the abused spouse. And it was really, the movie's really nice to Mrs. Nugent, wouldn't you say, Jack? What Bernie told us, like, it wasn't uncommon when he was away for 2 hours to have 90, messages from her, 90 pages.
Well, yeah.
She was out of her mind. And when you asked him, and this was the big question, you asked him, well, why didn't you just leave? Remember that?
Yeah.
That's the obvious question in these abusive relationships, like.
Yeah. And it just seemed like it was a classic abusive relationship that, that's what you always ask a battered wife or someone in that situation. And the answer, it's not that simple. There's a codependency there. And he suffered from needing to be loved by everyone. And, if he had left her high and dry, she definitely would have hated him for it. And I don't think he could live with himself.
Yeah.
And that was his fatal flaw. And something he still carries with him.
Do you remember Shirley, when we were talking about it just before we started shooting? Shirley was said, well, I'm right. I proved to you, talking about Ms. Nugent, I'm right, because I proved to you you're not such a good guy after all. She wins that battle. Remember that?
Yeah.
And she also said that the people are going to like her more than you because you're a kiss ass. And she's she's honest.
Right. Yeah.
Love Shirley.
I was worried when we started off, but she really, she didn't want to play it like Nurse Ratched. That's what she said. And I was thinking maybe that's what the character, maybe that's what it needs is a little Nurse Ratched.
Well, she's wonderfully both. I mean, we have the what we talked about, in the movie was the honeymoon. Your honeymoon period where before she leaves her estate to you and she's kind of in love again and happy and you're running off to cultural events, and that was the kind of the good time, and Shirley has that. She's still like a teenage girl, very, alive, very sensual, very, that's really her. But I think she likes playing these kind of crazy bitches too.
Did you always have her in mind for that role?
Yeah. I always had Shirley, but she was, even when we filmed it, I remember calling her up, or her agent initially. I said, I've got a great part for Shirley. I mean, she's a little young for it, but they like that. And, but she had aged into it, just the way Jack and Matthew, the cast that I ended up with, all were technically too young, in the late 90s. So sometimes when you wait, you got to be, filmmaking's about patience anyway. So this was a good lesson for me to just, when the planets fully align, it was the right time to make the movie. But it wouldn't happen without Jack. When he stepped in, it started, the script that no one got or liked, once Jack was interested in doing it, it was like, oh, that script's pretty good. Same script, But it was like that weird project. So I owe it all to Jack, actually.
Jack, it's a great performance, no question about that.
You're warming my heart from all these miles away.
Who has
Thank
a specific question for Jack?
Do you have questions for Jack while he's with us here?
House left here. I got a question about the music in particular and the difference between what seemed like ad lib in School of Rock versus the choices that you made on the songs here. But it sounded like you answered that when you said a lot of the songs were songs that Bernie actually performed. And I always want to say Jack did a great job with the vocal work here, which is very much different from School of Rock.
Yeah, and can I throw in one thing? Les Mis this year was going on about, they sang live. Well, Jack sings every note of this live. I don't know what they were talking about, like that had never been done before. We did it the year before. I just want to be on record. Jack sang live to everybody.
Yeah.
That's really him.
It was important to me to get those performances live because I can always tell a difference, and I think the audiences can too if you're really singing it for real. And it was a genre I'd never explored before with regard to gospel. And I really loved it. I loved singing those tunes and picking out all the. I mean, we had a lot to choose from, and we narrowed it down together. Rick sent me over a lot of songs and asked which ones I thought would be the best ones to do, and I was drawn to some of the ones that had what seemed to me to be sort of provocative, hidden meanings. What's the one? He touched me, oh, he touched me. There seemed to be something almost sexual about some of those songs. I mean, obviously, that's not the intent, but some of the love of the Lord just goes into some strange areas, and I just thought they were amazing. And maybe I'm revealing too much, but those were the songs that I really wanted to perform.
Another question?
Hi, I'm Laurel Ellis. I'm a social work major, and I actually just did a huge project on abusive relationships, like emotional and physical. And they've actually done studies where, like, the abuse in a relationship is, like, relevant to, like, brainwashing and, like, prison camps and stuff. So in, like, my opinion, I would have probably acquitted him because, in my opinion, it'd be self-defense. But if you guys were in the jury, would you have acquitted him, or would you have convicted him guilty?
Good question.
That is a good question. I mean, in life, given the evidence and all you might know, yes, I don't know, probation or some kind of more thoughtful sentence than life. But if you were at that trial and saw the way that jury looked at him and the way he was a confessed murderer, and Danny Buck showed a video at the beginning. I couldn't show it in the movie because it's really one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. It's when I don't know how they allowed him to do it, but a DA wants to make an impression if they can show, something that just knocks the jury, for a loop. And he showed in the forensics lab in Dallas when they pulled her body out of the freezer. Someone had videotaped it. I've seen it, and I wouldn't wish anyone to ever see this footage. But when I saw it, I was like, oh gosh, I can't even do this movie. I mean, there's nothing funny about. I mean, it was just so. The oddest thing, just horrific. But he showed it to the jury. I mean, that trial was over then. That's the first moment. It was over before it started. There was no nuance. So Bernie didn't get much of a defense. There was no going back from that. So, our jury system, everyone knows that. There was not a jury of his peers. We don't have our legal system is really geared toward, the DAs and what they can do. It's not really about thoughtful analysis and it's all emotional. And Danny Buck was able to win that one big time. I mean, they would have given him the death penalty if they could have, if it would have been a capital offense.
But I mean, that's the thing about the story is that it deals with gray areas. It's not a black and white, courtroom drama. Like all the ones we've seen in the past, where it's like, he's innocent, let him go. He's not innocent. I mean, he did murder her, and he deserved to do time, and it's just a question of, intent, and how much time does he deserve? Should he get the same amount of time as someone who planned it out? I don't think so. I think he's done enough time.
Yeah, to your point.
He deserved some time, and he did a lot of time, and I don't believe that he is in any way a danger to society.
No. Getting to know Bernie when we met him, and I've met him since then and corresponded with him, I saw the trial initially, and I saw how sensitive he was. There's that kind of psychopath who can act charming, but is really a psychopath. Well, Bernie isn't. He's the opposite of that. He really is the sweetest guy in the world who, like Jack said, wants to be liked so much. And he's, very sensitive. He's no more likely to kill, I think, than any of us are, at this point. He's been in 16 years. So, but your point, you would have acquitted him. I think the lawyer who's on the case, she's like, because I've always been, yeah, he did it. He deserves to do sometime. And she goes, I don't think he's guilty of manslaughter. I don't think he's guilty of murder. I mean, there's the legal case, and there's plenty of people in this world and who get off of murder if you can prove that kind of situation. There was a famous East Texas lawyer growing up named Percy Foreman who never lost a case, and he specialized in getting wives off who've killed their husbands. He could just do it. He abused her, and if you create a situation and you get that jury to pull the trigger with her, that was the strategy, and it worked over and over and over. So you can do it. You can, there's no absolute.
Amazing how we create all those guys in Texas.
Yeah. For better and worse.
Okay. Another one in the back here.
She asked if Bernie had a family. Jack, do you want to take that one when he was describing his upbringing to us?
Yeah,
It's
he
sad.
revealed that he lost his parents when he was very young. First, he lost his mother. He said he didn't have a mommy, which I thought was a slightly strange thing to say.
Yeah, when he was 2.
Yeah, but you could tell that part of his childhood was gone. He still has sort of a childish quality. Something was frozen then, and he lost his father when he was, I think,
14, yeah.
Yeah, a teenager, and so he was raised by his grandmother primarily. And I thought that was interesting, and he ended up being the most loved man in town, especially by the grannies, the widows, and he had such a close and strange relationship with this woman who was old enough to be his grandmother. I thought it was an interesting connection.
Question in the back here.
Hi, Jack. Did you feel more pressure playing a real person as opposed to a made-up character? Also, were you nervous you would portray Bernie incorrectly?
Yeah, it was definitely on my mind. And I think it just drove me to work a little harder on the subtleties and the nuances and the voice and the accent. And yeah, it changed my approach to the process a bit. Yeah.
But I think it meant a lot to Bernie himself when he met Jack and felt Jack cared about his portrayal of him, and we were there kind of to put him at ease. There is a pressure when you're, portraying real people, real events. You feel it matters to you what they think. Unfortunately, Bernie still hasn't seen the movie. They won't let him watch it in prison. They don't watch movies in prison. At least Texas prisons, they won't let him. If it's on TV or something, in the rec room, if it's on some station that shows it someday, he might see it. But we're still scheming to get him to be able to see it.
Yeah, we wanted to do a screening of it for all the prisoners, sort of like Johnny Cash going and do a concert, except that we would be showing up and showing our movie. But they said no.
Well, at first they said on the celebrity visit, it was like, yes, that sounds good. Well, yeah, they were all for it. And then when the time came much later, they were like, no, we checked. It was a quick no from the higher ups at the prison. Again, they don't do anything to make these guys ever feel, like they deserve anything. So it would have been a favor to let Bernie see the movie. Bernie himself said the only movie they ever saw that they ever all got together and watched was Mel Gibson's The Passion. That's the one.
The passion of the Christ.
Yeah, that one.
Question from the balcony.
Hi, I just wanted to hear a little more about how Jack and Shirley MacLaine prepared to interact with each other in this film.
Well, in the film, I mean, are you asking like how did we relate to each other off camera as well as on?
Yeah, how we prepared. Jack and I rehearsed a lot. Shirley, she was there a little bit, but she didn't seem that enthused about a lot of rehearsal.
No, she has a different approach. She sort of channels the character more like she does with her past lives. She kind of.
And literally, she was jealous of Jack because he got to meet the real Bernie. But she said she was hanging out with Ms. Nugent every night. She was having conversations and stuff.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, but we were kind of always rehearsing just when we were hanging out on the set because we kind of fell into our characters a little bit. I like to take care of her and take care of her every need and, protect her from the rest of the cast and crew. And we just sort of had a ball.
Yeah, Jack kept Shirley in really good spirits. She had a really fun time making this movie. And they did adopt kind of this relationship. I remember we were going to the premiere in Los Angeles, and there was a dinner before, and she's like, okay, Jack, pick me up and be here. And you were like behind her, and she was telling you kind of snap to where to be, what to do. It's like they were in those rooms. I was just kind of, okay, that's how that's going to be.
The main thing about working with Shirley, though, is you're going to hear some amazing tales of old Hollywood, She would often tell me, this is nothing, Jack. The stars, the so-called stars of today, you should have been there. You should have seen Frank. Now that was a star. She had great tales.
Question. I'm back here near the exit door.
So my idea of hardened criminals and a prison environment and these guys punching holes in leather in the craft room next to Bernie crocheting are not really maybe a very favorable environment towards Bernie, but obviously he won the people of Carthage over really well. I just wondered if you got any sense when you were there and in the prison and meeting with him, if he had sort of enamored the staff and his fellow inmates like he did the people in Carthage.
Yes, absolutely. He was the same guy inside the prison. Everyone liked him and respected him a lot. They look up to him. He teaches classes. They look to him for advice. Wouldn't you say, Jack? He seemed like a really beloved
he's definitely
inmate.
making the best of it. I mean, he's teaching Bible study and nutrition. He's big on nutrition, and people like him. People genuinely like him inside the big house, And it just obviously it's not easy. He's dying in there. He literally has health issues. What was his issue that he was dealing with?
This is our prison system, or in general. We're walking down the corridor, and I like it. The Latino inmates are looking out, going, "Nacho!" When they see Jack, "Nacho Libre." But other guys are like, "School of Rock," whatever. It was funny to hear the different fan bases behind the bars for Jack. But anyway, we're walking around, and a guy comes up to Bernie and hands him he has early onset diabetes. And then we were talking about what they eat in prison. Like, even guys who have money, you can go to the commissary and get food, but you can get basically it's illegal to be healthy in prison. You can have Wolf Brand chili, Doritos, and M&Ms and ice cream, and you couldn't ever, and then the food they get is so horrible. So we're kind of killing these guys in another way, and then
ends up
taxpayers
more
were paying for their health
money,
care too. It's really sad. It's you're at the whims of their bad diet choices, you know.
Yeah, it's almost a cruel and unusual punishment. You can't get like a
Yeah, I mean, it's
a
horrible.
fresh fruit or vegetable
town
once in a while.
Yeah, they don't have fans. Like a bunch of prisoners die in the South every year. Like at least 10 to 20 a year die of, you know, it gets to be about 116 degrees in their cells. And the ones who don't have money don't have fans. They don't have air conditioning. I mean, that's, you know, can't cage an animal up like that.
Yeah,
But
it's
you can
easy
human.
to say, hey, you know, you do the
can't people-
crime, you do the time, but it's
No, most of those guys are in there for
hard to
like drug
imagine
crimes
what
and
kind
stuff.
of hell they're in, you know? It's sort of unfathomable when you really think about going away to a place, you know, for decades.
Yeah. So.
Another question, house left here.
Hi, Jack. I wanted to ask about your process for developing the physical performance with the walk, the voice, the kind of fast penguin walk. And also, did you have as much fun in the Music Man scene as it looked like?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I have a musical theater background. I did lots of it in high school, so I relished the opportunity to do the 76 trombones number, and we worked really hard with a local musical theater professional in Austin, Texas. But yeah, the walk and the talk, I just got all of that from Bernie, and I had the benefit of tons of videotape to watch and study because he was a public figure, and there was lots of video of him, you know, leading congregations and telling stories. So, yeah, that was kind of a great thing.
Jack just absorbed Bernie. You should have seen him. Well, you see that clip at the end where Jack's just looking at him, and that's how he was. Jack just absorbed it like a sponge. It was really interesting to watch, you know, to have that front row seat to Jack ask him so many questions, and then he just observed it all and took it in, you know. And then that's what really kicked everything up a notch, I think, from that moment on.
Yeah, it helps to have so much information and to be able to close your eyes between takes and go, okay, what would Bernie do? Let me just sort of imagine him. And you got a sort of a wealth of information to draw on.
Okay. We have a question for you, house right near the exit door.
I was wondering, you said that you're friends with Joe Buck, and overcharging by prosecutors is a big problem. Has he ever expressed any doubt or any regret when a guy comes in and confesses and doesn't put up much of a fight, throwing the book at him like that and getting the maximum possible sentence?
Yeah, Danny Buck, you know, he's kind of like, I was just doing my job, is sort of his approach to it. I think DAs are programmed that way. They don't get reelected having a lot of compassion and a view of that. That's not really their job. So unfortunately, it should be their job, but I think just the nature of our system rewards really harsh punishments. It keeps you employed. If anyone can ever portray you for a second as soft, that's why we have this drug war. That's what, you know, it's just, if you're ever portrayed as soft on crime. But that said, I mean, Danny has admitted to me that, I mean, hell, Bernie helped his wife when she was opening a florist in town. Bernie helped decorate the shop, and they were friends, and he didn't consider Bernie a horrible guy. Like, he's admitted he wasn't a psycho. I said, well, yeah, he's not a psycho. He's like, oh, no, he's not. I said, well, then why is he still in prison? You know, like, I don't know. It's kind of complex, but that could change. It could change. We have hope, you know, at the moment. And Danny could be a part of that.
Yeah, you never want to blow the Hollywood bugle too hard, though, because that can always backfire.
Yeah. Well.
I remember when some friends of mine were really getting behind the Freeing the West Memphis 3, the kids in that amazing documentary series. I don't know if any of you saw it, but
yeah,
it was just like a real sense that if anyone from the Hollywood community came out in the press and started the chant for their release. It would have actually done more harm than good in their case, because the people that made the decision, or brought the conviction in the first place, they start to circle the wagons, and they start to really hunker down and get defensive. So you don't want to. It's a delicate situation.
Yeah, that's such a clear-cut case of guilt or innocence, and they really hunker down when they're innocent and they've been proven guilty. They never reverse. I mean, they'll do anything to prove that. We're in a different situation here because Bernie's been in for so long, and there was a conviction, and no one's questioning certain details. So
Right.
I think it's a little different, maybe a little hopeful that Bernie could potentially come up for parole sooner than what he's scheduled to. A few things have to happen, but
In the balcony, to your right, up here.
Yeah, we never did determine what was the nature of the relationship between Bernie and Marjorie. Do we know?
Yeah, well, according to Bernie, they were just really good friends, and went on amazing adventures together. But there was no romance whatsoever. It was much more like a mother-son or grandmother-son-grandson relationship. But
Yeah,
there was
when you
definitely
say-
tenderness there, and it was misconstrued by people in town.
well, it's fun to gossip about, that kind of thing. But when you say the relationship, what aspects of it are unclear? I mean, they're kind of bonded about something. It's not sexual, obviously.
Well, not to that one guy. The one guy who was saying he was kissing on her and sort of sexual. That's one of my favorite parts.
Not like the kiss you'd give your grandma, or, a little more of a, just.
Down in the middle here, towards the back.
Richard, I hope you can talk a little bit about the townspeople who provide so much of the narrative voice. Right? If I understand correctly, most of them are actually townspeople there. To what degree were those scripted, or did you try to get them to perform? And what was your thought process behind that?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the most unique aspect of the storytelling here, was to use this kind of extensive Greek chorus of people. I just called them gossips. In the script, it was just gossip number one, gossip number two. Just, I saw the movie from the initial way I took in the story. Skip Hollandsworth, who wrote the article that I read, he gave me his journalistic files, and I was just reading through them, and I was laughing at a lot of what these people said, just the way they recalled events and some of their phrases, and just the colorful language they used. And I got that idea. It's like, oh, I've never really seen a movie, I don't think, told. I mean, a lot of movies have direct address. That's been around forever. But to this extent, it seemed appropriate for this movie, because almost all of us took in this story via other sources. Like, Bernie's in jail and he couldn't talk. Miss Nugent's no longer with us. And you hear this story from other people. So I said, oh, it works in this case. So there was a lot of it. And so I wanted it to be very authentic. Like I said, I'm from there, so I thought, this is a lot like my mom and her friends. I was looking for them, And so we went to that area and just put out an open call. And a lot of people came in, hundreds and hundreds of people came in and did quick little interviews, narrowed that down, I'd say about 300 people, narrowed it down to about 60, and then started giving them lines. It was all scripted, but just to see, a lot of people are these great characters. Then you give them a line to do, they can't quite do it, but a lot of people can. Just incorporate that line and say it the same, with their same mannerisms, their same personality. So it was getting the ones who felt like they could be themselves with scripted material. And then to encourage them to add other lines or anything that popped into their head. So most of it's scripted, but some of my favorite little bits are when the actor would say additional things. I mean, the very first interview we did was with K-Baby, the woman with who visits him in jail at the end with the glasses with the, she's awesome. Kay Baby Eberson, that was the first interview. She cut Elvis's hair. Remember that, Jack? She worked for Elvis in the 70s, early 70s. And just this great character. She's retired. She got to hang out a lot. That's why she got incorporated more in the movie. But that first interview, she was just saying, you got to be friendly in a small town. And, you know, she, talking about Miss Nugent, wasn't friendly. And she threw in the line, just out of the blue, she goes, honey, there's people in this town who would have shot her for $5. I didn't know where that came from. And I was like, holy crap, this is going to work, you know. This thing is going to go, you know. And Sonny Carl Davis, the guy who has the map of Texas, he's the #1 narrator, really, the most. He's an actor. He's an actor, a guy I've admired for years, and finally had a good part for him, I felt. And he threw in a lot of that. He can just go. That cousin counting, all that stuff he said about, I don't have any idea where that, you know, more tattoos than teeth, and all those lines, throw another tire on the fire. He made up all that. You know, that was really funny. So he's a genius, that guy. So it's fun to have a forum to let people really do their little jazz solo, and he sure did. So it was probably about 6 or 7 people who would be actors or professional actors, and the rest are this mix. And some people, they were townspeople, but they didn't necessarily know Miss Nugent and Bernie, but some of them did. That was really her hairdresser. That was the elderly woman at the end, that's really Miss Nugent's neighbor. You know, talking about forgiveness, who liked Bernie a lot. She didn't, you know, like everybody else, she didn't have much good to say about Miss Nugent. Didn't say anything bad about Miss Nugent because she's too polite. But you could tell her sympathy. She took trips with them. She really liked Bernie quite a bit. And
we have a question for you, House Right, near the exit sign.
You have answered most of my question already, but I was going to ask simply, in the business you're in, you have to create a arresting image of a community, capture the patois, capture all of the character. But what % of the people that you met in Carthage fit the image of the people that you had on screen? I presume there are literate people there, cosmopolitan people there, and so on. I'm just curious what % of the Carthage community was not represented on the film.
Well, that's a big question. I think you can't really judge people by, you know, you hear one thing. These people are cosmopolitan. A lot of them could teach at the local junior college, or you don't know what they do, but you know, they're not all rednecks. But they were pretty. I think it was fairly representative of a certain, you know, of most of Carthage. I haven't had many complaints about. Certainly in Bernie's world, the church, his circle, you know, his community that was around him, people who would be kind of invested in that story. I think, you know, I think it's pretty accurate. No one's really said, you know, if you live in a town like that, I mean, Miss Nugent was by far the richest person in town, and you know, you have to kind of travel to. You go to the ballet in Longview, or you go to musical things in Dallas. You drive, or Shreveport, too. You go there a lot. But you know, there's local musical theater, but there's not, you know, the culture there.
This is a really authentic Texas tale, though. I mean, you could tell by the way that it plays in Texas. We had a screening of it in Austin, and the people in the audience were just erupting with appreciation. You know, I think it's because, Rick, you're from East Texas, so you have an intimate knowledge of that land. And that's one of the great things about the movie, is it's an incredible snapshot of that part of Texas, and I think it was right on the money.
Yeah, unlike Italian filmmakers or Jewish, you know, whenever you have I can make fun of them. No one else can, but I can.
Yeah.
It's my peeps, you know.
Yeah.
Question from the balcony.
If Bernie had been found not guilty, would the film still have been made? And if so, what might you have done differently?
You know, that's a good question. That's the film I thought I was making when I went to the trial. I was sure that the way Skip's article ends, it's like they can't find a jury. There might not even be a trial. This guy's going to get off. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought that's for a real, conservative, law and order, throw him in jail, lock him up, throw away the key kind of environment, that this guy, because he was so well liked, was probably going to not get convicted of murder because the person he killed was so disliked. I thought that would be the ending. This is when I first came aboard this story. And then I found it to be just the opposite. By the end of the trial, or the beginning of the trial, it was like, oh, okay, not only is he not going to get off, he's going to get punished too harshly. So it was a very different journey and a different story to tell at the end. I thought the legal case, I didn't want this to be like a John Grisham, where it's a big trial movie, so it's pretty short trial, but I got really fascinated with all the legal machinations of how that all worked. But, didn't want to spend too much time doing it, but it's a pretty interesting legal case to me anyway. It still continues to be,
One here, house left. Unfortunately, this will have to be our last question.
Hi there. I huge Skip Hollandsworth fan, and this must have been a pretty cool experience for you, not only starting with his article, but then having him, he's written so many incredible stories, and then giving him a chance to be a screenwriter too. So could you talk a little bit about that process, particularly the evolution over so many years? And then also a quick shout out to Jack Black. Sorry you couldn't be here, but thank you for writing my favorite karaoke song of all time, which title I can't mention.
Oh, thank you. I assume you're talking about the love song. Thank you. I wish I could be there. I feel really like a soft Hollywood schmoo, not getting my butt out there, but I was scared. It was storming. But all you brave souls just braved the weather. It didn't matter to you. You found a way out there. Next time I'm getting out there, I promise.
But to answer your question about Skip Hollandsworth, the journalist who writes for Texas Monthly and who I got to be good friends with, talked to him the other day, he is an incredible writer with an incredible nose for a story. He heard about this and just took off to Carthage he lives in the Dallas area. And I remember just calling him up after that, and we just started talking about what the movie could or couldn't be, and it was a fun collaboration all along. He hadn't written a screenplay, but he just kept throwing ideas out, and it was good pulling him into this world. I kind of like doing that. It's kind of like working with a non-actor. You can sometimes get. It was fun working with Skip in that way as a co-writer. He had a lot of fun ideas, and it was just there for me to mold. He was very open about that. Like, it's your movie here. Just what if this? What if that? And I was like, yes, no. So it was a fun collaboration. All the way down the line. Kind of continues to be. He speaks now. He gets asked to go talk about this movie a lot in his writer circles. So that's kind of fun for him, for sure. So
we're going to end this by saying a word about Roger.
Yeah.
The first word is, Roger said two things about this film, and he wrote about this film. He said, one is this film probably should not have worked. that the director of this film could have made so many, I think the expression he used is flat-footed choices, but this director made all the right choices in a very difficult subject. And that is the first reason it's a great movie. And the second reason it's a great movie is that Jack Black has been given a role that is so full and so complex, and he gave one of the greatest performances of the last several years. And he said that. And I'm going to end this on a bit of a bittersweet note in that Rick and I am releasing Rick's next film. It's called Before Midnight with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. And we were on a very big conference call with publicists and lawyers and producers talking about the release of the film. And while the conference call was going on, I was told that Roger Ebert had passed away. And I mentioned this on the call, and there must have been 12 people on the call,
Yeah.
people in England, people everywhere. And the call became a
Roger
litany
Love
of
Fest.
stories
Yeah.
about Roger.
It was our
and-
own memorial on this call.
on this call.
We all started telling stories.
And the fact of the matter is, I released Rick's first film, Slacker, and Roger's support of Rick Linklater, who he's kind of the master of so many genres, goes all the way back to that first film when he saw the film in Sundance. And his desire months ago was that this film would be here, and Rick and Jack Black would be here, and he emailed me and said, make sure you can be here. And this is just a wonderful evening for him.
Yeah. I just feel so lucky as a filmmaker to have gotten to know Roger. I met him at Sundance one year in the late 90s, and I was in Chicago in 2001 with my movie Waking Life, and he presented it and asked us to join him for dinner, and he was unlike any other film critic ever. I think he was just so, as everyone talks about, so unpretentious, such a real guy. You know, that's in his writing, and that relationship, you know, I mean, he's writing reviews, but we met at the point of just enthusiasm for movies. And that's what I'll always treasure, his stories. He was such a great raconteur, you know, so funny, stand-up comedic funny, you know, and I thanked him 2 years ago when I was here he didn't know this at the time, but I attended his Citizen Kane class at a film festival back in the 80s, a 15-hour class, frame by frame. And like, forget film school, just go to Roger Ebert's commentary on Citizen Kane, and you will learn everything you need to know about filmmaking. I mean, he shared his passions with us, and I think that's the best thing any of us can do in this world, and he did it better than anyone. And you know, I feel blessed to have known him, and he left an impact on you know, our whole world here. So, and you know, in that call, it crossed my mind for like 2 seconds. I was like, wait, are they, because this event was coming up, are they going to still do the festival? And then it was like, of course they're going to do. Chaz,
don't
are you
even
kidding?
say
Chaz,
that.
this audience, this university, I mean, this festival is going to go on forever, right? I mean, you guys aren't ever, this is going to go on. That's what Roger would insist, right? So it was just a passing thought. So, yeah. So it's really great to be with you guys.
His presence will be with us until the last person in this room is still breathing. How's that?
And they'll still be talking about him. You know?
Thank you.